The desperate alliance. The obsidian sky above Volaris Prime wept with fire. Commander Nerix stood on the command deck of the last functional Valerian defense cruiser, watching as the hive devoured his homeworld. His silver-scaled hands trembled against the viewport, not from fear, but from the rage that threatened to consume him just as thoroughly as the hive was consuming his people. "Status report," he rasped, his dual vocal cords producing the haunting harmonic that characterized Valerian speech. "Evacuation pods at 73% capacity, Commander." First Officer Talas replied, her luminescent eyes dimming with each word. "Estimated survival rate of our species, 14%. 14%. From billions to mere millions in less than a solar cycle." The hive had appeared without warning, their biomechanical ships swarming from the void like locusts. The Valerians, despite their advanced defensive systems and crystalline technology, had been overwhelmed. Their plea to the Galactic Council had gone unanswered, a bureaucratic delay that had cost them everything. "Commander," Talas's voice cut through his thoughts. "Unidentified vessel approaching. Not hive configuration." Nerix's dorsal spines stiffened. "Another predator coming to scavenge what's left of us." The forward screen flickered to life, revealing a ship of unfamiliar design, angular, almost primitive in appearance, with exposed thrusters and armor plating that seemed insufficient for deep space travel. Yet it moved with surprising agility, weaving through the debris field of destroyed Valerian vessels. "We're being hailed," Talas announced. "Put them through." The screen shifted to show a face that sent a ripple of discomfort through Nerix's secondary nervous system. A human face. Humans. The newest spacefaring species, barely a century into their galactic exploration. They were considered unpredictable, dangerous even, by many established civilizations. Their homeworld, Earth, was a restricted zone for most species due to the humans' volatile nature and their tendency to advance at an alarming rate. "Commander Nerix," the human said, her voice lacking the musical qualities of Valerian speech. "I'm Captain Alina Reyes of the Earth Alliance vessel Prometheus. We've come to help." Nerix's bioluminescent patterns flashed with skepticism. "Help? The Galactic Council ignored our distress signals. Why would humans, of all species, come to our aid?" "The Council moves slowly," Reyes replied with what Nerix recognized as a human smile, a baring of teeth that would be a threat display among Valerians. "We don't, and we have something that might just save what's left of your people." "What could you possibly offer against the hive?" Nerix demanded. "Their biotech assimilates all conventional weapons. Our crystalline defenses, far superior to anything humans possess, failed within hours." "With all due respect, Commander," Reyes said, "we're not offering conventional weapons. We're offering something the hive has never encountered before. Human ingenuity backed by desperation." The human ship's hull opened, revealing what appeared to be massive cannons, but unlike any Nerix had seen before. They pulsed with an energy signature that made the ship's sensors fluctuate wildly. "What are those?" he whispered. "Quantum disruption arrays," Reyes answered. "They don't destroy the hive ships. They unravel the quantum entanglement that allows their hive mind to function. Without the collective, they're just confused organisms." Nerix's tertiary hearts quickened. "That's impossible. Such technology would require a complete disregard for established scientific principles." "Yeah, we get that a lot." Reyes's expression hardened. "Look, Commander, we can debate theoretical physics while your world burns, or you can let us help. Your choice." Talas leaned close to Nerix, her voice pitched below human hearing range. "Commander, we have nothing to lose." Nerix's inner eyelids flickered, a gesture of resignation. "Very well, Captain Reyes. We accept your assistance." "Good," Reyes nodded. "But there's one thing you should know. Humans don't do charity, Commander. If we save what's left of your civilization, the Valerians will owe us. One day we'll call in that debt." Nerix felt a chill ripple across his scales. What kind of payment would humans demand? That depends on what we need when the time comes, Rice said with another unsettling smile. Do we have a deal? The viewport behind Nerix blazed with another explosion as another Valerian city fell. His homeworld, the cradle of a 16,000-year civilization, was dying before his eyes. We have a deal, he said finally. The human ships moved with surprising coordination, forming a perimeter around the remaining Valerian evacuation vessels. The quantum disruptors fired, not beams or projectiles, but waves of something that bent the light around them, distorting reality itself. Nerix watched in astonishment as the hive ships began to falter. Their perfect formation dissolved into chaos. Some turned on each other, others spun helplessly in space. The massive hive mother, a living fortress the size of a small moon, began to shudder, its organic sections peeling away like flesh from bone. It's working, Talus whispered, her voice tinged with disbelief. For 6 hours, the human vessels maintained their impossible defense, giving the Valerians time to evacuate every survivor they could find. When the last transport was loaded, Reyes's face appeared on the screen again. That's it, Commander. We've bought you all the time we can. The disruptors are reaching critical instability. We need to pull out now. Nerix stared at the human captain, trying to understand the creatures who had just saved his species from extinction. Why did you really help us, Captain? The truth. Reyes hesitated, then answered. Because someday, Commander, humanity might need something only Valerians can provide. Better to have you alive and in our debt than extinct and useless. Pragmatic, cold, even, but honest, and Nerix could respect that. Then until that day comes, Captain Reyes, know that the Valerians acknowledge their debt to humanity. As the Valerian fleet limped away from their dying homeworld, escorted by the human vessels, Nerix found himself wondering what price humanity would eventually demand. Whatever it was, he suspected it would be as impossible as the salvation they had just provided. 3 days later, in the temporary Valerian settlement on Lycos IV, Nerix received a formal document from Captain Reyes. A promissory note, she called it. The terms were simple yet ominous. In exchange for the salvation of the Valerian species, Commander Nerix, or his successor, agrees to provide assistance to humanity when requested, regardless of personal risk or conventional possibility. Nerix pressed his bioprint to the document, sealing the fate of his people to the unpredictable whims of humanity. That night, as he gazed up at unfamiliar stars, he wondered if extinction might have been simpler. The price of salvation. 3 years passed like the shadow of a dream. The Valerians had adapted to their new home on Lycos IV, rebuilding a fraction of their former civilization from the ashes of near extinction. Commander Nerix, now elevated to overseer of Valerian restoration, had almost allowed himself to forget the debt hanging over his people. Almost. The human ship that appeared in orbit wasn't the Prometheus. This vessel was larger, darker, bristling with technology that made Nerix's scientific council murmur in both admiration and fear. It bore no insignia, no identification, just a name etched in human script across its hull. EVENT Horizon. They've come, Talus said quietly as they watched the ship descend through Lycos IV's atmosphere. After all this time, Nerix straightened his ceremonial mantle, the crystalline fragments embedded within catching the light. Then we will honor our debt. The human delegation that disembarked wasn't led by Captain Reyes. Instead, a tall, gaunt man with artificial eyes stepped forward. Where Reyes had projected an aura of military precision, this human exuded something else, a feverish intensity that set Nerix's instincts on edge. Overseer Nerix, the man said, his voice oddly modulated. I am Director Kane of the Threshold Initiative. I believe you owe us a favor. The human verification codes matched those provided by Reyes 3 years earlier. There was no denying it. The debt was being called. What does humanity require of the Valerians? Nerix asked, leading the humans into the crystalline council chamber. Kane placed a device on the central table, It projected a hologram of what appeared to be a massive ring structure floating in deep space. This is the Rift Gate, humanity's most ambitious project, and our last hope. Last hope? Talus questioned. Against what threat? Kane's artificial eyes whirred as they focused. The hive that attacked your world was merely a scouting force, Overseer. Our long-range sensors have detected the main hive approaching from beyond the galactic rim. Not hundreds of ships, millions. They'll reach populated space within 5 years, and when they do, they'll consume everything. A cold dread settled in Nerix's primary stomach, and this rift gate is meant to stop them. Not stop, Kane corrected. Escape. The gate is designed to create a controlled wormhole to another galaxy, one beyond the hive's reach. We plan to evacuate as many species as possible. Nerix stared at the hologram, his scientific mind already identifying the flaws. Director, even with humanity's creative approach to physics, this is beyond theoretical possibility. The energy requirements alone would drain entire stars, Kane finished. Yes, that's where you come in. The director produced another hologram, this one showing the intricate neural structure of a Valerian brain. Your species possesses something unique in the galaxy, quantum intuition. Your brains naturally perceive quantum states that other species need massive computers to calculate. We need a Valerian interface to make the rift gate work. Nerix felt his secondary hearts stutter. You want a Valerian to merge with your machine. Not just any Valerian, Kane said, his artificial gaze fixing on Nerix. You. The council chamber erupted in protests. Thalas stepped forward, her luminescence flaring with anger. Absolutely not. The Overseer is essential to our survival. Kane remained unmoved. The promissory note specified, regardless of personal risk. Did it not? Nerix silenced the council with a gesture. What exactly would this merger entail? Your consciousness would guide the quantum calculations necessary to stabilize the wormhole, Kane explained. Your mind would essentially become the operating system for the rift gate. And what happens to me after? In moment of silence. We don't know, Kane admitted. This has never been attempted before. Nerix studied the human's face, searching for deception, but finding only desperate determination. Why did you help us, really? You knew even then that you would need a Valerian mind for this project, didn't you? Kane's expression shifted subtly. Captain Rice believed your people deserved to survive. I believed we needed you to survive. Both objectives were met. How pragmatic, Nerix said dryly. Humanity's defining trait, Kane responded. We've survived this long by doing whatever is necessary. Nerix requested 3 days to consider the request. The human agreed, though his discomfort with the delay was evident. When the delegation returned to their ship, Talus confronted him. You cannot seriously be considering this, she hissed, her harmonics discordant with emotion. They're asking you to sacrifice yourself for their experimental technology. They saved our entire species, Nerix reminded her. And if what they say about the hive is true, even if it is, why must it be you? Nerix touched the crystalline fragments in his mantle, each representing a city lost on Volaris Prime. Because I made the deal, Talus. Because I would rather die attempting the impossible than live knowing I dishonored the sacrifice that saved us. 3 days later, Nerix boarded the EVNT Horizon with a small Valerian delegation. The journey to the Rift Gate took weeks, during which Kane briefed him on the details of the procedure. The more Nerix learned, the more he recognized the desperate genius behind the human plan, and its fundamental instability. Your calculations have a 17% probability of success, he told Kane after reviewing the data. That's assuming optimal conditions. Kane didn't seem surprised by Nerix's assessment. Higher than our own estimate. With your quantum intuition integrated, we're hoping for 20%. You would risk everything on such odds. Wouldn't you? Kane countered. You did, when you accepted our help against the hive. When they finally reached the Rift Gate, Nerix was struck speechless. The structure was colossal, a perfect ring nearly 1,000 kilometers in diameter, constructed in the emptiness between star systems. Ships from various species swarmed around it like insects, adding modules, making adjustments. "You've united the galaxy," Nerix observed. "Fear is an excellent motivator for cooperation," Kane said. "The Galactic Council that ignored your distress call. They're funding half this operation now that they've seen the Hive scans." The integration chamber at the gate's control hub was a marvel of bioengineering. Neural interfaces designed specifically for Valerian physiology lined a crystalline pod at its center. As technicians prepared him for the procedure, Nerix found himself facing an unexpected visitor, Captain Alina Reyes. "I thought you should see a familiar face," she said, older now, with new scars and a weariness that hadn't been there before. "And I wanted to thank you for honoring a debt you forced upon me." Nerix's harmonics carried a touch of bitterness. "For giving humanity another chance," she corrected. "I fought for the mission to save your people, Nerix. Not everyone thought it was worth the risk. And now I'm repaying that risk with my life." Reyes shook her head. "With hope. There's a difference." As the technicians signaled readiness, Reyes stepped back. "Humanity remembers its debts too, Commander. Whatever happens today, the Valerians will have a place in whatever future we forge." The integration was pain beyond description. Nerix felt his consciousness stretching, fragmenting, then reforming across the vast network of the Rift Gate. He could sense the quantum fabric of space-time itself, the invisible threads that held reality together, and the weak points where they might be torn. Billions of calculations flowed through his expanded awareness. Probabilities, energy distributions, dimensional harmonics, all processed through the unique quantum perception that was his birthright as a Valerian. Through the haze of data, he perceived the activation sequence beginning. Power surged through the ring, harvested from 3 nearby stars. The space within the gate began to distort, reality folding in on itself as the wormhole formed. 17%. The number flashed through Nerix's consciousness. Too low, too risky. But then he touched something unexpected. Another consciousness, vast and ancient, stirring on the other side of the forming rift. Not the Hive. Something else. Something that reached back toward him with what could only be described as recognition. In that moment of connection, Nerix understood. The impossible venture wasn't just about escape, it was about finding allies. Ancient allies who had fought the Hive before, in cycles long forgotten. The probability shifted. 17% became 42. Then 78, as the entity on the other side lent its own power to stabilizing the wormhole. Through his distributed awareness, Nerix communicated to the control room. "The way is open. But it's not an escape route, it's a bridge." The last thing Nerix perceived before his consciousness fully merged with the gate was Captain Reyes's voice. "Humanity repays its debts, Commander. Your people saved ours. We never forget." As the wormhole stabilized, ships began to move through, not in retreat, but in formation. The Rift Gate hadn't opened a path to flee the Hive. It had opened a way to flank them, to bring the battle to them with allies from beyond the known universe. Nerix's body remained in the integration chamber, but his mind spread across the stars. He was no longer simply Valerian, no longer merely himself. He had become something new, a bridge between worlds, a guardian of the impossible passage that humanity had dreamed into existence. Perhaps this was always the price of dealing with humans. They never asked for what you expected to give, but for what you never imagined possible. In the void between galaxies, the Hive approached, unaware that their prey had become predators. And at the center of it all, a single consciousness guided the way forward, the fulfillment of a debt that had saved 2 civilizations, and perhaps now would save them all.